But we, as populists, always have to be on guard for the concentration of corporate and state power. That's something we're going to, and that's a fight that's internal to Max. Because I think for the first time they see that there has been someone that actually made not just a political difference, but a deep cultural difference.
Steve Bannon reacted to Charlie Kirk's death by leaking information, while also sharing his perspective on what the event signifies for America's political climate.
General concern with everything you've heard out of Utah about this situation, sir?
Nothing. I don't know any more than anyone else does. It is so muddied. The waters are so muddied right now that it would take a diver with an acetylene torch to get into the wreck and pull out the corpse. I have no idea, Steve, what the hell is going on. The kid said, they say the kid confessed, right? Okay, then they said he's not cooperating, then he was cooperating, then he wasn't cooperating. Then the messaging between alleged assassin and his trans roommate, or his transitioning trans roommate, which would make him a trans roommate, seem to be very stilted. For kids that age, they don't talk that way. If you actually analyze the alleged messaging between the two of them, it doesn't seem like
the assassination represents more than just an isolated act of violence. He frames it as part of a broader pattern aimed at silencing voices that challenge the established order.
Their age don't talk that way. In fact, someone did a complete analysis of that conversation, and it seems that it was an AI written text message between the assassin, or the alleged assassin, and his roommate, based on style, objective analysis of the text tone style. Dialogue is formal, with complete sentences, proper punctuation, and no slang, emojis, or abbreviations typical of young adults texting casually. Someone's actually analyzed this. You know, there are a lot of smart people out there, Steve, who aren't in the government, who listen and watch, former intelligence operatives who are retired, who haven't lost their marbles, who are saying something's not right with the picture. But again, how do we know who done it? It's a gigantic who done it. But does it matter who did it?
Bannon argues that the circumstances surrounding Kirk's death suggest more than a random tragedy, implying that powerful forces stand to gain from silencing figures who inspire and
fight for Obama. But we, as populists, always have to be on guard for the concentration of corporate and state power. That's something we're going to, and that's a fight that's internal to MAGA and the Trump administration. And I think that fight's going to get very big coming next year and up to the midterms.
That makes sense. Let me ask you this. The other piece of this is like the leftist meltdown around the Jimmy Kimmel indefinite suspension. I mean, it hasn't even been fired, is really at 10 out of 10. Like I said at the top, they actually are pretending that this is as serious and as big an event as what happened to Charlie. It's very strange. It's like weird trauma glomming. And,
Megan, I think it's a 12 out of 10. I think it's a 12 out of 10. I've never seen anything like it. This morning on Morning Joe and CNN, it's full coverage. Everything else going in the world, not
his leaks. Bannon underscores the growing hostility Kirk faced in the lead-up to his assassination.
So I want to ask you why.
Because I think they see the fact they could be fired.
Would it be this high if we hadn't just lost Charlie? Because they're scared. They know how angry we are. They know how mobilized and motivated we are. And is it a direct reaction to that? Would it be at a 12 if we hadn't just lost Charlie, clearly at the hands of somebody infected with left-wing ideology? Or is this just because, as you say, now they're worried they could actually lose their jobs?
I think normally it would be a 7 or 8, maybe a 9. I think it's 12. And the reason is they see the self-organizing nature of the commemorations of Charlie's, the death and the vigils, but also the determination of these young people to carry on his work. And I think they see the streets of Korea. They are scared to death, because I think for the first time they see that there has been someone that actually made not just a political difference, but a deep cultural difference.
Bannon points to campaigns of defamation, attempts to strip Kirk of his platforms, and financial pressure designed to weaken his influence, arguing that such coordinated efforts are never accidental.
That's got them scared to death. And I think they feel if they don't put this down now, that if President Trump and the regulators go after him, and also the free market capitals like the affiliate groups start responding to the consumers in their local communities where most of this is happening, right? Because remember, the affiliates, the owned and operated are New York, Chicago, LA, you know this. The affiliates are really out in the heartland of the country, right? The smaller stations. If they see this happening, they think that's a revolution. They think the barbarians have actually breached the gate. And so that's why they have to put it down now. I think this self-organizing response to Charlie's death has been something that I don't believe it's ever happened in American history. It didn't happen in Kennedy. Didn't even happen, I don't think, in Martin Luther King, right? This peaceful, just self-organizing vigils, etc. And they're scared to death. That is raw cultural and political power. That's why they're at a 12, not a 8 or a 9, which they normally would be. But Megan,
Steve Bannon responded to Charlie Kirk's death by leaking information and offering a stark reading of its significance for America's political climate, arguing the assassination is not an isolated act of violence, but part of a broader pattern targeting voices that challenge.
What you said, though, is exactly right. They're worried about the vigils across the world. They are worried about the 62,000 applications with high school students and college students to join TPUSA. They know exactly where that's going to lead when those kids become voters in a couple of years for the high schoolers, and they're probably already registered for the college students. Not in a good place for Democrats. And so now what we're starting to see is there's nothing on our side that makes us look bad. Okay, so we talked about we didn't shoot him, we didn't infect the person who shot him. That was all MAGA. Jimmy Kimmel at the apex of that argument. And also, we're not celebrating Charlie's death. We're not.
Responded to Charlie Kirk's death by leaking information and offering a stark reading of its significance for America's political climate, arguing the assassination is not an isolated act of violence, but part of a broader pattern targeting voices that challenge the established order. He suggests the details surrounding Kirk's death point to something deeper than a random tragedy, claiming powerful forces benefit from silencing figures who galvanize grassroots movements. And in his leaks he highlights the buildup of hostility Kirk faced, campaigns of defamation, efforts to strip him of platforms, and financial pressure meant to weaken his influence, which he contends are not accidental, but part of a deliberate attempt to delegitimize and eventually eliminate dissent. With Kirk's death, in Bannon's view, the grim culmination of a system that first destroys reputations and then leaves critics vulnerable to even darker outcomes.
Government is just tweeting out Sinclair can rot in hell, along with Charlie Kirk. His tweet, last I checked, had 40,000 likes, saying Charlie Kirk is rotting in hell. I mean, this is a sick group. And so they feel the need to go on MSNBC, Steve, and just deny it's happening, which is also driving people to our side.
100%. And by the way, as bad as the one you put up, and we could play hours of that, they have ones about Charlie's children, Charlie's widow. I mean, these people are depraved to a level. And that's why I say there's no compromise. There's nothing to compromise about. You can't give that a group hug. You can't sit down and debate it. The person that debated it and gave his life doing it with humility and humble and always say, bring the people up that disagree with me the most in the front line, was Charlie Kirk. And they shot him like a dog and then celebrated it and mocked it. Okay? So there's nothing to compromise. There's nothing to compromise with. And they show you right there. They tell you exactly who they are. So all we have to do is figure out how to...
Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, arguing that it marks not just a personal tragedy but a larger shift in the political landscape and the way dissent is dealt.
This already in the FBI were designating these transgender militias as nihilistic, units, right? Extremist units. So they do that. We're going to designate Antifa as, I think, an executive order by Charlie's funeral. A terrorist organization that get all the tools in the toolbox. It's now time to take action, because you see right there, they'll lie to your face. Okay. The thing also it's hidden. I want to make sure we bring this up, is that what they most fear is not so much Charlie Kirk, the political operative, but Charlie Kirk, the dedicated Christian nationalist. Charlie Kirk was a Christian, evangelical Christian, and he served when he just went to Korea in the last weekend of his life. Half of it was turning point and rallies about how to stand up to the political party that's controlled by the CCP that just won election there for the young people. The other half was spiritual, going to do spiritual, speeches and talks to the great evangelical population of young people in South Korea, which is one of the most Christian nations on earth.
Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, warning that if America does not confront how political disagreement is being twisted into justification for violence, the nation risks sliding into chaos.
That's what they fear about Charlie Kirk. When they're looking at this, and they look at those vigils, and they look at that humility and the humble and the prayer, they see a political force that is a Christian political force. Nothing puts the fear into Wall Street and corporate America and the globalist, okay, as America as a Christian nation, based upon Judeo-Christian values, but a Christian nation. And that is what's freaking them out the most. That's why they're in meltdown. That's why they don't know what to do about this. And particularly as we sit there and go, we're going to be relentless. We're going to take your entire apparatus apart, brick by brick, and we're not going to blink, and we're not going to stop.
The government needs to be responsible to the people of Britain. It needs to protect Britain. It needs to protect the weak, those who cannot protect themselves, especially the children. And when I read about some of the horrific stories and how the government did nothing and tried to hide it, they try to hide these horrific crimes. And then you see how much violence there's on the left, with our friend Charlie Kirk getting murdered in cold blood this week, and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with. And the message is really, my message is to the reasonable center. The common sense. So my appeal is to British common sense, which is to look carefully around you and say, if this continues, what will?
Bannon sees Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, warning that if America does not confront how political disagreement is being twisted into justification for violence, the nation risks sliding into chaos, while Musk views Kirk's passing not just as the loss of a political figure but as a symptom of a society deeply fractured by hostility and division.
This is a message to the reasonable center, the people who ordinarily wouldn't get involved in politics, who just want to live their lives. They don't want, they're quiet, they just go about their business. My message is to them, if this continues, that violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. Again, I'm appealing to sort of common sense and fairness. I want to emphasize just common sense and fairness, which is that we should make our decisions based on merit, on how, if somebody is talented and hardworking, then that should be the only means of advancement.
Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, warning that if America does not confront how political disagreement is being twisted into justification for violence, the nation risks sliding into chaos, while Musk views Kirk's passing not just as the loss of a political figure but as a symptom of a society deeply fractured by hostility and division. To him, Kirk represented a younger generation willing to engage in the marketplace of ideas, and his death signals how corrosive and unforgiving public discourse has become.
Discrimination on the basis of sex or religion or any race or anything else. And what a lot of the woke stuff is, it's actually super racist, it's super sexist, and it's often it's anti-religion, but only anti-Christian. Like, why only anti-Christian? That's unfair. So this is why, again, my message is to the reasonable middle. Do you not want a world where there is fairness and common sense, and you advance as a function of how hard you work and your talent and your integrity? That should be all that matters. And the woke blind virus that I call it is against all of that. I think when you look at the behavior of organizations or people, you have to say, what is the incentive for these organizations? And frankly, there's a massive incentive on the left to import vote.
Bannon sees Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, warning that if America does not confront how political disagreement is being twisted into justification for violence, the nation risks sliding into chaos. While Musk views Kirk's passing not just as the loss of a political figure but as a symptom of a society deeply fractured by hostility and division, to him, Kirk represented a younger generation willing to engage in the marketplace of ideas, and his death signals how corrosive and unforgiving public discourse has become, stressing that Kirk's role in politics was not merely about partisanship, but about amplifying voices that felt excluded from mainstream.
If they can't convince their nation to vote for them, they're going to import people from other nations to vote for them. This is a massive factor. And frankly, it's a strategy that will succeed if it is not stopped. Thus far, it is succeeding. And you see strong movements to allow people who are not from Britain to vote in Britain, to allow people who are not from France or elsewhere to vote in those countries, and thus depriving the citizens of their democratic power. It's really a voter importation thing, and if they're allowed to succeed, if this is allowed to continue, they will succeed in importing voters, swaying the elections, and taking your vote away from you. That is 100% what is happening.
Where are you at right now, less than 24 hours later?
Well, I mean, of course, bewildered. I got back last night and stayed up until probably like everybody until 1 a.m, talking to people and texting people, and then, on X, looking at the reaction. And I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, that's really not the way at all, to sit and marinate in the hate. Which I did. I couldn't help it. It's like pornography or snuff videos or something. You're just like mesmerized by it. It's like watching, a tragedy over and over. Not the violence, but the hate. I mean, I must have watched 15 videos of young women celebrating Charlie's death, and my first thought was, well, this is obviously some kind of, manufactured attempt to divide the country against itself, and it's probably all fake. And then you look, and it's actually not fake. Here's a teacher from an elementary school in Idaho, and here's a yoga instructor from West Hollywood, and these are like real people with real names.
SI's Kirk's assassination as a pivotal turning point, warning that if America does not confront how political disagreement is being twisted into justification for violence, the nation risks sliding into chaos. While Musk views Kirk's passing not just as the loss of a political figure but as a symptom of a society deeply fractured by hostility and division, to him, Kirk represented a younger generation willing to engage in the marketplace of ideas, and his death signals how corrosive and unforgiving public discourse has become, stressing that Kirk's role in politics was not merely about partisanship, but about amplifying voices that felt excluded from mainstream conversations. His passing, Carlson suggests, should remind
boy, I mean, the depth of evil out there is really overwhelming. Like, what country? What do I know the country? Do I know who lives here? Like, what is this? And I was just, I couldn't turn away. And then I realized when I woke up this morning, that's really hurting me. And I woke up to a group text from my wife, to our family text. Of course, everyone knew Charlie. He was just at our house, and very upset for a bunch of different reasons. And she sent Luke 6, which is like the most radical thing that anyone's ever said. And it's like, no. Love your enemies. Pray for your persecutors. When someone assaults you, don't fight back. Which is impossible, of course. I mean, no one can do that. And it literally takes supernatural intervention for anyone to live that way, much less to feel that way. And that's what's called for, is supernatural intervention. I mean, you can take all kinds of steps. We do need to restore order in the country, and no one's kind of done that for the last 50 years. And this is the end result of true disorder.
Assassination as a turning point, warning that political disagreement is being twisted into violence. While Musk sees it as a symptom of a fractured society and the loss of a generation willing to engage in open debate, Carlson adds that Kirk's unapologetic conviction, refusal to please elites, and efforts to give young conservatives a voice make his passing a stark reminder of how rare genuine purpose has become in public life.
Order, by the way, that doesn't mean authoritarian behavior or limiting people's constitutional rights or races. There's nothing like that. I mean, order is the key to happiness and peace. Order is what God creates out of chaos at the beginning of Genesis. Like, order is a prerequisite for joy. So we need order. We don't have it. I hope it's restored. But much more deeply, people need to be transformed and see each other as God sees them, including their enemies, as human beings who are doing bad things but are still created by God. Like, without that worldview, then you descend into hell. In fact, you already live there, which is where, in some sense, we live now. And boy, that just became clear because it happened to me. I mean, I was sitting there fuming and despair and like, by the way, what was this? There's always a lot going on in the backdrop, a lot. And I don't know.
Kirk's assassination as a turning point, warning that political disagreement is being twisted into violence. While Musk sees it as a symptom of a fractured society and the loss of a generation willing to engage in open debate, Carlson adds that Kirk's unapologetic conviction, refusal to please elites, and efforts to give young conservatives a voice make his passing a stark reminder of how rare genuine purpose has become in public life, as he consistently engaged directly with the cultural debates of his time through campus organizing, media appearances, and public...
But everyone's got an opinion on that, and it really took me away from Charlie, Erica, and their children, and the things that you should be meditating on and praying about. It totally took me out of that into this place of hate, and I don't want to go there. So let me just say quickly about Charlie. I've known him since he was a teenager, and just an amazing person. But the two things that stick out, he's a Christian man. And we talked about that a lot, including, just the other day. There's a lot of pressure on public people who run huge, $100 million a year nonprofits, and there are a lot of pitfalls and traps. That's why so many of them are destroyed. And Charlie really did, without, betraying details, like he walked the line for real. It was the topic of many conversations between us, because I've seen so many people destroyed. Most people are destroyed by power, and he wasn't. And I just really admire that. I mean, to his last moments, in order, he cared about God, his wife, and his children, and then his country. So, and that was totally real.
Bannon views Kirk's assassination as a turning point, warning that political disagreement is being twisted into violence, while Musk sees it as a symptom of a fractured society and the loss of a generation willing to engage in open debate. Carlson adds that Kirk's unapologetic conviction, refusal to please elites, and efforts to give young conservatives a voice make his passing a stark reminder of how rare genuine purpose has become in public life, as he consistently engaged directly with the cultural debates of his time through campus organizing, media appearances, and public speaking. Carlson believes this energy made him both a target of criticism and a figure of influence, while also pointing to Kirk's resilience.
Affirm that, because I just talked to him about it so much. And I admire that, and he's a model, really. I mean, he didn't have hate in his heart. And it was funny, and again, it's one of the reasons I couldn't stop looking at these videos last night. People were describing the opposite of what he was. He was filled with hate. No. And if you talk to him about people who had attacked him or who were truly his enemies, up to, and I think including the people who assassinated him yesterday, he would never, ever express hate. Ever. He would always turn to, no, this person has been led astray. This person is clearly possessed by dark forces. This person is a perpetrator, but also a victim of evil. I mean, that really was his worldview. That's the Christian worldview. And he expressed that in public and especially in private. And I think that faith, which was completely real, not the fake faith that you see on display so often, but a real one, that was the root of his courage. And he had real courage. He loved being with people who disagreed with him, not theoretically with them, but physically with them, like close enough to smell.
Kirk's assassination as a turning point, warning that political disagreement is being twisted into violence, while Musk sees it as a symptom of a fractured society and the loss of a generation willing to engage in open debate. Carlson adds that Kirk's unapologetic conviction, refusal to please elites, and efforts to give young conservatives a voice make his passing a stark reminder of how rare genuine purpose has become in public life, as he consistently engaged directly with the cultural debates of his time through campus organizing, media appearances, and public speaking. Carlson believes this energy made him both a target of criticism and a figure of influence, pointing to his resilience despite relentless attacks from mainstream outlets and political opponents. Kirk pressed forward, never pretending to be flawless.